Hi guys, I have a wild story to tell you, and this happened just Saturday, this last Saturday, and I wanted to tell you how amazing I think that the internet is now. And for me to get the story across and why this stuff happened, I have to start from the beginning. So this is going to be a little bit of a story, and I hope you guys stick with me. And we're going to start with, and from the late 30s, 1930s to the mid 1950s, my grandmother had 13 children. Her last baby, a little girl, was born late in Grandma's life. And my grandpa had passed away, and right after her last baby was born, my grandpa had passed and left her with the kids. Well, all the other kids were already adults. Most of them were married and moved away already and all of that. And I think she had 3 at home at that time. In 1955, the man that, after my grandfather had died, my grandmother had gotten married again. And in 1955, he just up and left my grandmother, just took off and left her. She didn't even know he was leaving. He just packed up and left her alone with 3 kids. Well, you know, in the 1950s, it was hard to take care of your kids on your own. Well, eventually the welfare stepped in and took all 3 of her kids. Well, after they took the kids and she knew she wasn't going to get them back, she packed up and took off and went after him. Well, the 2 oldest girls, there was 3 girls left at home. The 2 oldest were old enough, they sent them to a girls' home, and that's where they kept them until they were 18. Because all the other kids had already married, gone, just kind of disappeared, had families of their own, and they didn't even know this was going on. Well, the welfare, the youngest girl was still just a baby, so the welfare had adopted her out. Well, years and years passed, and the youngest was the one that still nobody knew where she was at. Well, in about 1978, she showed up on my grandmother's doorstep. She'd gotten married and had 2 little girls, and she had come back because she wanted Grandma to know the girls before Grandma passed. She wanted the girls to know their grandmother. Well, I met her. I was only 16 years old. I'd met her, and you know, her and I were pretty close in age. She was 7 years older than me, so we got along great. And so her and her husband left and went back home, which they lived about 3-4 hours away from us. And she'd gotten a divorce, and in 1979, I decided I was going to go down to her house and spend the whole summer with her, so I did that. And she, newly divorced, her husband had taken her kids, all of that. And she was like maybe 24 years old at that time, 23, 24, somewhere in there. We had a great time. We went to the drive-in theater and watched the movie Grease when it first came out in 1979. Well, then after summer was over, I went back home, and then the next summer, her and her new husband had come up, and they spent the summer with us the next summer, and we spent most of our time during the summer going camping and all that. Well, then when she left, that was it. Nobody heard from her again. We didn't know what happened. She quit contacting anybody, never heard from her again. So, you know, and all of her sisters and brothers to this day are passed except 3. There is her, my mother, and their brother. Well, within the last week, her brother will be 87 next month, and he's fallen sick and he's close. They moved him from the hospital Friday over to hospice, and everybody is getting a hold of me, asking me if I knew where she was, if I had a phone number. I haven't spoken to this woman in 40 years. And I kept telling them no. Well, nobody knew anything. So what I did, they just kind of left it up to me to find her. So what I did was I tried to remember what her first marriage name was second marriage. So, and my uncle that was dying, he was the only one she stayed in contact with. He would go down and visit her and everything else. He was in hospice. He can't talk anything. He couldn't tell me anything. So I got old letters and got her name off of old letters that was 30 some years old. But come to find out, it was her second marriage name, not her first. So it took me a couple of hours to remember what her first marriage name was, but I did. And I had no idea how I was going to find her. The town that she lived in, the last time I heard from her, I called the police station and they said, we can't help you. You have no last name for her and we can't look her up by her maiden name or last marriage or first marriage name. And he said, we can't do anything without an address, apology. They were nice about it and apologized. I could tell they really wanted to help, but they just couldn't. But anyway, I was talking to another cousin and stuff, and I said, give me a little bit of time, I'll find her. So what I did is I went online and I found I typed in the name of the last town that she lived in that I knew of 40 years ago, and I found a city page. You know how most towns and cities have their own page where they list community happenings and all of that stuff that's going on in their town. Well, I found that page and I asked to join. I had to go through a bunch of questions like, do you live here? Do you know someone here? And I kept saying, no, 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 no. And then the administrator got a hold of me and said, if you don't know anybody here and you don't live here, why do you want to join our group? And I explained to her. She put me right through. So what I did was I wrote out the story of why I was looking for her. And I told everybody, I said, I'm looking for her. I gave her maiden name. Then I gave the name that she had when she married the first time, the name she married the second time, and I explained if she's married again. I have no idea. I haven't seen her in 40 years. And I put on there, this is an emergency, that I had a very limited time because her brother, this was her last brother that was alive, and he was in hospice and they didn't expect him to live through the whole day Saturday. Brother, let me tell you, within 1 hour, people started sharing that page. Within an hour, it had been shared 161 times from 13 towns and cities across where she lived. Nobody knew anything. I kept getting pictures from ladies saying, is this her, is this her? And I'm like, this picture was a 20-year-old girl. And I'm like, no, she's in her 60s, or middle 60s to early 70s. And just picture after picture, it wasn't her, wasn't her, wasn't her. And about the 6th hour, this girl came on and she said, I think I know who you're looking for. And I said, okay. And so she posted a picture and I'm like, that's her, that's my aunt. And how I could tell is because about 6-7 years ago, one of my aunts, which would be her sister, had passed away. And when that picture came up, she was identical to the aunt that had passed away, and I knew it was her right off the bat. Well, she said, and remember the last time I saw her, she only had 2 kids, and this girl said, I know where her son is, and if you'll send me your phone number, he wants to call you to find out why you want his mother. So, I'm rushing around trying to get the phone number to her, and he called and I explained to him, and he's like, oh my God. He said, I heard about you my whole life and always wanted to meet you. But he said, we had no idea where you were, if you was even still alive. He said, I'm headed over to her house now, and he said, I'll talk to her when I get there. Because in my original post, I had put, if anybody knows her, knows where she's at, or a phone number, do not give me the phone number. Do not give me her address. You guys, if you know her, get a hold of her and ask her if it's okay that you give it to me. So that way people wasn't suspicious that I was looking for other reasons. But anyway, by the 8th hour, I was on the phone talking to her, and she's like, who are you? I'm like, I'm like, Aunt Julie, it's me. And she's like, I'm Julie, but I don't know who you are. And I said, it's Rusty. And she said, well, on your Facebook page it says Alan. I said, well, it's Rusty. And she goes, you have changed so much. She said, if I'd have met you on the street, I would not have known who you were. But anyway, we talked for a while and I explained to her what was going on. And she said, when they went back, she said she didn't hear nothing from anybody. She said she lost track of all the family. And she said the brother that was fixing to pass, she said he was the only one that would come down and visit. But she said nobody else would. No phone calls, no nothing. And, you know, and I just thought she'd gotten married, disappeared, and went on to her own life. But come to find out, she had had 3 more kids after I went down that summer. And that's who I'd talked to, was her oldest son. But I just thought it was so amazing that these people had gotten this. I mean, it was shared over the internet. There was women on there trying to help me. They were looking at city records and Googling and doing this and that, and we was all trying all these last names, and it was just amazing. And how we found her is the lady that found her was her oldest son's ex-girlfriend, and she's the one that got the message to him, so I could call him and explain to him, and then he went to his mother's, and she called me from his phone, and Saturday night we talked for hours. It was so amazing. And I mean, it was just like, and this is how I felt. I felt like a band of angels. Nobody questioned me out of the ordinary stuff or made it sound weird or anything. They all band together and they just took it all over the internet asking questions and everything, and they helped me find them. I was so grateful. I honestly felt like God had stepped in and just put out a band of angels to help me. And I was just in shock within 8 hours that I was on the phone with her. And it was pretty strange, but it was a miracle. 40 years, and it only took me 8 hours to find her. And she was living 2 small towns over from the town that she lived in when I had went down to visit her. But anyway, you know, I told him, I said, it's an emergency. Her last brother's dying, and I'm on a time limit here. I don't even know how much time I have to find her. These ladies and gentlemen kicked him to action. I'm sorry, it's just emotional for me. These ladies and gentlemen that I had no idea, never met them, didn't even know who they were, they didn't even know who I was. They all kicked into action and helped me find her. And I'll be forever grateful. And it has restored my faith in the internet, you know. So anyway, guys, I just wanted to share that story with you, what I've been going through for the last couple of days, because I just thought it was so amazing what happened. See you later, guys.